For thousands of years, humans have searched for the source of awareness, tracing it from ancient temples to modern laboratories, from sacred texts to glowing brain scans. Philosophers, scientists, and mystics have all asked the same question in different ways. Where does consciousness truly come from? And what role does it play in shaping reality? From Egyptian afterlife rituals to Greek debates, from Freud's unconscious to quantum experiments, every era has pushed the boundary further. Today, new discoveries challenge old assumptions, suggesting that awareness may not be confined to the brain at all. What if the mind is not just observing the universe, but participating in it? The concept of consciousness has long been a topic of fascination and mystery, woven into the fabric of both ancient wisdom and modern scientific inquiry. To understand its significance, one must first look to the past, where ancient cultures and civilizations approach consciousness as something far more profound than a mere byproduct of the brain's activities. In Egypt, consciousness was seen as the divine essence, the very breath of life, intricately tied to the soul's journey through the afterlife. The Egyptian Book of the Dead speaks of the soul's liberation from the physical realm, suggesting that consciousness could transcend the body and continue in another form. This understanding of consciousness was not simply metaphysical. It was intimately connected to rituals, rites of passage, and the very structure of existence itself. The ancient Egyptians, much like many other cultures, believed that consciousness held the power to influence both the material and spiritual worlds. This connection between consciousness and the divine was central to the way they viewed life, death, and the cosmos. Similarly, in ancient Greece, philosophers such as Plato and Aristotle pondered the nature of consciousness, not in terms of neurons or chemical reactions, but as an ethereal force. Plato, in his dialogues, suggested that the mind, or soul, was capable of transcending the physical body, perceiving eternal truths beyond the senses. He postulated that the material world was but a shadow of a higher, more perfect realm of ideas, an abstract existence only accessible through the consciousness of the soul. Aristotle, while more grounded in the physical world, also acknowledged the importance of the mind in understanding reality. His work laid the foundations for centuries of philosophical and scientific inquiry into consciousness, framing it as an essential element of human existence that transcends mere biology. These early ideas place consciousness at the center of the universe, a force capable of understanding and perhaps even shaping the very nature of reality itself. As time moved forward, the view of consciousness evolved with the rise of scientific materialism, particularly in the 17th and 18th centuries. Thinkers like René Descartes began to see the mind not as a mystical force, but as something that could be understood through reason and logic. Descartes' famous declaration, cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, proposed that the act of thinking was the fundamental proof of existence. For Descartes, consciousness was a reflection of the individual's ability to reason, a function of the mind that could be studied through observation and analysis. This marked the beginning of a long period where consciousness would be treated not as a spiritual or metaphysical force, but as a product of the brain, a biological entity subject to the laws of physics and chemistry. The great leap forward in scientific understanding came with the development of psychology in the 19th century, with figures like Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung attempting to break down the mysteries of the human mind. Freud's psychoanalytic theory, for example, posited that consciousness was merely the tip of the iceberg, with the unconscious mind holding far greater sway over human behavior. Freud's model suggested that what we are aware of, the thoughts and experiences we can actively perceive, is only a small fraction of the deeper, unconscious forces that drive us. This idea of a divided mind challenged the simplistic, materialist notion of consciousness and laid the groundwork for a more nuanced view. Carl Jung expanded on this idea with his concept of the collective unconscious, suggesting that there are shared archetypes, symbols, and experiences ingrained within all of us, deep, inherited elements of the psyche that shape our understanding of the world. Jung believed that these unconscious forces were not just personal, but collective, shared across all of humanity. This shared unconsciousness, according to Jung, connected all humans on a deeper level, transcending time and culture. However, despite these advances in psychology, consciousness remained largely unexplained, locked away in the recesses of the mind. The 20th century saw a shift toward behavioral psychology, where thinkers like B.F. Skinner and John Watson rejected the study of consciousness altogether, arguing that only observable behavior could be measured scientifically. For much of the 20th century, consciousness was relegated to the background, deemed too subjective and elusive to be studied in any meaningful way. This period of scientific suppression stifled much of the exploration into the deeper, more mysterious aspects of consciousness. Yet, even as behaviorism took center stage, there remained pockets of research into the unexplained, areas where the scientific community was forced to confront the limits of its own understanding. The true breakthrough came with the advent of quantum physics, which introduced a radically different view of reality, one where the observer could not be separated from the observed. In the early 20th century, physicists like Max Planck and Albert Einstein discovered that, at the smallest levels of reality, the universe behaves in ways that defy classical logic. The famous observer effect in quantum mechanics showed that the mere act of observation could alter the outcome of an experiment. This raised profound questions about the role of consciousness in shaping reality. If the act of observing reality changes its very structure, could consciousness itself be influencing the fabric of the universe? For many scientists and philosophers, this marked the beginning of a new understanding of consciousness, not merely as a byproduct of the brain, but as an active participant in the creation of reality itself. In parallel with the developments in physics, there's been a growing body of research into the placebo effect, an anomaly that further underscores the power of the mind. The placebo effect, where individuals experience real physical changes after receiving a treatment that has no active ingredients, is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that consciousness may play a role in shaping reality. People who believe they are receiving effective treatment often experience dramatic improvements in their condition, even when the treatment is nothing more than a sugar pill. This phenomenon challenges the materialistic view of medicine, suggesting that belief, expectation, and the power of the mind are potent forces capable of influencing the body's biological processes. The placebo effect raises intriguing questions about the mind's ability to influence not just subjective experiences, but objective reality. It suggests that consciousness may be more than just a passive observer of the world. It may be an active force capable of directing the course of events. Could this power of the mind be linked to other unexplained phenomena, such as psychic abilities or spontaneous healings? The mysteries of consciousness seem to be tied to realms that are not easily understood by traditional scientific methods. Yet, as we continue to delve into the unexplained, it becomes increasingly clear that consciousness may hold the key to unlocking some of the greatest mysteries of the universe. There are many phenomena that defy easy explanation: ghost sightings, UFO encounters, near-death experiences. These events are often dismissed by mainstream science as anomalies, hallucinations, or coincidences, but what if they are the result of altered states of consciousness? Could consciousness be tapping into dimensions or realms that are normally hidden from our perception? The possibility that consciousness can access these realms challenges the conventional view of reality, which tells us that what we perceive is the sum total of what exists. What if there is more to reality than meets the eye? What if, in certain moments, the veil between the known and the unknown is lifted, allowing us to glimpse a deeper, more mysterious layer of existence? As we look toward the future, it seems that the boundaries of consciousness are expanding. With the rise of quantum theories, studies of altered states, and an increasing openness to ideas once considered fringe, we may be on the cusp of a new era of understanding. Could it be that consciousness itself is the key to everything, the unifying force that explains not only the unexplainable, but the very fabric of the universe. The mysteries surrounding consciousness are only beginning to unfold, and it is clear that, as we venture deeper into the void, we may discover that the true nature of reality is far stranger, more interconnected, and more mysterious than we ever imagined. In the early stages of scientific inquiry, consciousness was largely considered a metaphysical concept, something mysterious and intangible. However, over the centuries, as scientific methods began to take root, thinkers began to seek rational explanations for what had once been relegated to the realms of the mystical and the divine. The 17th century brought a major shift in this thinking with the advent of Cartesian philosophy, as René Descartes, one of the founding figures of modern philosophy, famously declared, "Cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am." This profound assertion framed consciousness as something that proved the very existence of the self. Descartes' philosophical argument centered around the idea that while we can doubt everything else, the external world, the existence of others, the one thing we cannot doubt is our own thoughts. This established consciousness, or the act of thinking, as the foundational proof of being. Descartes thus positioned the mind as a separate entity from the body, an idea that became known as dualism. The mind, or soul, was not simply a byproduct of physical processes, but something that existed independently. For Descartes, this made the mind a unique and powerful force, one that could not be fully understood through the mechanisms of material science alone. His dualism, however, also set the stage for a long-standing debate about whether consciousness could ever truly be explained within the confines of physical science. The rise of scientific inquiry in the 18th and 19th centuries saw thinkers such as Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and later, Immanuel Kant, seeking to understand the nature of consciousness through the lens of empiricism and reason. For Hobbes and Locke, consciousness was something that arose from sensory experience, a product of the way the human mind interacted with the external world. Locke, in particular, introduced the concept of the tabula rasa, or blank slate, which suggested that the human mind was devoid of inherent knowledge at birth, and that all knowledge came from experience and sensation. This idea ran counter to the notion of an innate soul or divine spark of consciousness, proposing instead that consciousness was shaped entirely by external forces. Locke's views laid the groundwork for later psychological theories, particularly those that would emerge in the 19th century. However, it was the development of psychology as a scientific discipline that truly began to move the study of consciousness away from philosophy and into the realm of observable, empirical research. In the late 19th century, Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung became central figures in the emerging field of psychology, both of whom grappled with the complexities of consciousness. Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, proposed that consciousness was but a small part of the human mind, with the unconscious mind holding far greater influence over our thoughts, behaviors, and experiences. For Freud, the conscious mind was limited to the thoughts and feelings we were actively aware of, while the unconscious was a vast reservoir of repressed memories, desires, and impulses. He believed that much of human behavior was driven not by rational thought, but by the hidden forces of the unconscious. This theory not only revolutionized the study of consciousness, but also suggested that the human mind was far more complex and mysterious than previously thought. Freud's ideas would later come under scrutiny, particularly his emphasis on repressed sexuality and the Oedipus complex. But his emphasis on the unconscious mind opened the door to a more expansive understanding of human psychology. Carl Jung, who initially worked closely with Freud, diverged from his mentor's views to develop his own theories of consciousness. Jung proposed that in addition to the personal unconscious, there was also a collective unconscious shared by all humans. This collective unconscious contained archetypes, universal symbols, myths, and images that were common across cultures and time periods. For Jung, consciousness was not just a personal experience, but was deeply intertwined with the human race's shared psychological heritage. His exploration of symbols, dreams, and myths further expanded the notion of consciousness beyond individual experience, suggesting that it could serve as a bridge between the personal and the collective, the conscious and the unconscious, and the material and the spiritual. In contrast to Freud, who viewed consciousness as a battleground of competing forces, Jung saw it as a dynamic interplay between different aspects of the psyche. Jung's work laid the foundation for much of modern depth psychology and continues to influence the study of consciousness today. Yet, while both Freud and Jung significantly advanced the understanding of consciousness, their theories were still based on the premise that consciousness was a product of the brain, rooted in the biological and psychological processes that govern the body. As the 20th century progressed, the study of consciousness began to shift once again as behaviorism became the dominant school of thought in psychology. Figures like B.F. Skinner and John Watson argued that consciousness was not something that could be directly observed or studied scientifically, as it could not be measured in the same way as behavior. For behaviorists, psychology should focus on the observable actions of individuals, and consciousness, which was seen as a subjective and unquantifiable experience, was left out of the equation. This view dominated much of psychology throughout the first half of the 20th century, relegating consciousness to the background in favor of studying behavior and external stimuli. However, this behaviorist approach eventually began to face criticism, especially as new fields of research emerged in neuroscience and cognitive science. As technology advanced and brain imaging techniques became more sophisticated, scientists were able to study the workings of the brain in ways that were previously unimaginable. The advent of neuroimaging allowed for the observation of neural activity in real time, shedding new light on the relationship between consciousness and the brain. By the late 20th century, consciousness had once again moved to the forefront of scientific inquiry, as neuroscientists and cognitive psychologists began to attempt a more direct approach to understanding it. Despite the vast progress made in the understanding of the brain and the mind, however, consciousness remained as elusive as ever. The brain, with its billions of neurons and intricate networks of connections, was now seen as the physical seat of consciousness, but how exactly it gave rise to subjective experience, the feeling of being conscious, remained a profound mystery. Theories abound, ranging from the idea that consciousness emerges as a byproduct of complex neural activity, to the more radical suggestion that consciousness itself is a fundamental aspect of the universe, akin to space and time. The most prominent of these theories is the integrated information theory, proposed by neuroscientist Giulio Tononi. This theory posits that consciousness arises when information is processed in a highly integrated way across different regions of the brain, suggesting that the brain's ability to integrate and unify information creates the experience of being conscious. Other theories, such as the global workspace theory, propose that consciousness arises from the brain's ability to focus attention on specific thoughts or experiences, allowing them to become available to the rest of the mind. Despite these advances, consciousness remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in science. It is often referred to as the hard problem of neuroscience, a term coined by philosopher David Chalmers to describe the difficulty of explaining why and how subjective experience arises from physical processes in the brain. While much has been learned about the brain and its functions, the question of why it feels like something to be conscious, the sensation of awareness, has yet to be answered. This gap in understanding has led some to propose more radical theories, such as panpsychism, which posits that consciousness is a fundamental property of all matter, not just of brains. According to this view, everything in the universe, from atoms to galaxies, possesses some form of consciousness. While this theory is controversial, it reflects the deep mystery surrounding the nature of consciousness, suggesting that we may be missing something fundamental in our understanding of the mind and the universe. The struggle to understand consciousness is not just an academic pursuit, but also a deeply philosophical and existential one. The question of what consciousness is and how it relates to the fabric of reality touches on profound questions about the nature of existence itself. Are we simply biological machines? Our consciousness an illusion created by the brain? Or is there something more? Are we merely passive observers of the universe? Or do we have the ability to shape and influence reality itself? The mystery of consciousness remains an open question, one that invites both scientific inquiry and spiritual exploration as humanity continues to grapple with one of its greatest enigmas. As we search for answers, it becomes increasingly clear that the exploration of consciousness may hold the key to understanding not only the mind but the very nature of the universe itself. The placebo effect, long dismissed by mainstream science as a mere psychological quirk, has become one of the most fascinating and puzzling phenomena in medical research. It refers to the remarkable power of belief, where individuals experience real, physical changes in their health simply by believing they're receiving a treatment, even when that treatment is nothing more than a sugar pill or a saline injection. This effect challenges the very foundations of how we understand medicine, biology, and the mind-body connection. At its core, the placebo effect reveals the profound influence that the mind can have over the body. It suggests that our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs are not just secondary to our physical health, but might actually play a central role in determining our well-being. One of the most striking aspects of the placebo effect is its ability to induce real, measurable changes in the body. In clinical trials, patients who receive a placebo treatment often show improvements in symptoms that are indistinguishable from those who receive the actual drug. Pain relief, enhanced mood, even reductions in blood pressure. These are just some of the changes that can occur when a patient believes they are receiving effective treatment. In some cases, the effects can be so profound that patients experience full recovery from conditions that were thought to be untreatable. What makes this particularly perplexing is that these changes occur despite the absence of any active pharmacological ingredient in the placebo. The treatment, whether it's a pill, injection, or even a sham surgery, has no therapeutic effect in itself, and yet patients often report significant improvement. This raises an important question. If the placebo has no inherent medicinal value, what is responsible for these dramatic changes? The answer, as it turns out, may lie within the mind itself. One of the most compelling explanations for the placebo effect is that it triggers the body's natural healing mechanisms. When we believe that we are receiving treatment, our brain may release endorphins, dopamine, or other chemicals that help alleviate pain or improve our mood. These are the same chemicals that are released in response to real, effective treatments. The brain's ability to produce these substances in response to a belief, rather than a physical intervention, suggests that the mind can influence the body in ways that we are only beginning to understand. In fact, studies have shown that the mere expectation of improvement can activate the same neural pathways as actual medical treatments, pointing to the intricate connection between the mind and the body. Moreover, the placebo effect reveals the importance of psychological factors in the healing process. The therapeutic relationship between doctor and patient plays a significant role in the effectiveness of the placebo. When a doctor conveys confidence in the treatment they are offering, patients are more likely to experience the placebo effect. This demonstrates that the mind's belief in the efficacy of treatment and the trust in the healer can be just as important as the treatment itself. It also sheds light on the power of suggestion. Patients who are told that they are receiving a groundbreaking new treatment may report feeling better, even if they are simply receiving a placebo. The power of expectation becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, where the belief in healing triggers actual physical changes in the body. The implications of the placebo effect extend far beyond medicine. It challenges our understanding of the mind-body relationship, suggesting that consciousness itself has the ability to shape reality in profound ways. If the mind can trigger changes in the body through belief alone, might it also be able to influence other aspects of the material world? This idea has far-reaching consequences, particularly when we consider the possibility that consciousness might not just be a passive observer of reality, but an active participant in its creation. The placebo effect, in a sense, becomes a microcosm of a much larger mystery, one that involves the power of the mind to shape not only our bodies but the world around us. There are numerous anecdotal stories that further support the idea that consciousness can influence physical reality in extraordinary ways. One of the most famous examples is the case of a man who underwent a placebo surgery. In a study conducted in the 1950s, patients with knee pain were randomly assigned to one of two groups. One group underwent an actual surgical procedure, while the other received only a fake surgery. The latter group, unaware that their procedure was a sham, experienced the same level of pain relief and improvement in mobility as those who had undergone the real surgery. This case, among many others, illustrates the powerful role that belief plays in shaping our experiences of pain and healing. Similarly, in the realm of chronic illnesses, patients with conditions like irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, or fibromyalgia have reported significant improvements in their symptoms after receiving placebo treatments. In some cases, these improvements last for months or even years, despite the absence of any real medical intervention. The mind's ability to influence conditions that were once thought to be purely physical in nature underscores the idea that consciousness plays a far greater role in health than we once realized. Even in cases where the placebo effect is not fully understood, patients often experience relief simply because they believe they are receiving help. The power of suggestion can create profound changes in the body's physical state, reinforcing the idea that the mind is not merely a passive bystander, but an active agent in the process of healing. The placebo effect also invites us to rethink the nature of illness itself. Traditional medical models often view diseases as purely physical phenomena that are caused by viruses, bacteria, or genetic mutations. While these factors certainly play a role in health, the placebo effect suggests that the mind can influence how these factors manifest in the body. For example, patients who are told they have a terminal illness may experience rapid declines in their health, even if the diagnosis is incorrect. On the other hand, patients who are given hope and a belief in recovery may experience miraculous turnarounds, even in the face of serious illness. This phenomenon, known as psychosomatic illness, shows that the mind's beliefs and emotions can directly affect the physical state of the body, sometimes with surprising and unpredictable results. Research into the placebo effect also intersects with studies on the brain and its neural networks. Recent advances in neuroscience have begun to shed light on how belief and expectation can alter brain activity. Functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, studies have shown that when people believe they are receiving treatment, areas of the brain associated with pain relief and pleasure activation light up, even if the treatment is inert. This suggests that belief itself can directly influence brain function, leading to real changes in how we experience the world. In some cases, patients report feeling better simply because their brain has been primed to expect improvement, reinforcing the idea that consciousness has the power to shape our physical reality. At the same time, the placebo effect raises a host of ethical questions. If belief alone can produce such powerful results, what are the implications for medical practice? Should doctors be allowed to administer placebos to patients without their knowledge, especially if it leads to improvements in health? Some argue that placebos, when used ethically, can be a valuable tool in healing, especially when traditional treatments fail. Others, however, caution against the potential for manipulation and deceit, warning that patients' autonomy and trust in their healthcare providers should always be prioritized. The placebo effect also calls attention to the limitations of our current medical models. While modern medicine has made tremendous strides in understanding and treating physical ailments, it has often overlooked the role of consciousness in the healing process. The placebo effect suggests that there is more to health than just the physical body. It is also deeply tied to the mind and its beliefs. Perhaps the future of medicine will involve a more holistic approach, one that takes into account not just the body's biological processes, but the psychological and emotional factors that contribute to health and healing. Ultimately, the placebo effect forces us to confront the mystery of consciousness itself. If belief and expectation can produce real, measurable changes in the body. What does this tell us about the true nature of reality? Could it be that consciousness is not simply an emergent property of the brain, but a force that can influence the physical world in ways we don't yet understand? The placebo effect may be one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that consciousness holds a far more central role in shaping our lives than we realize. It challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about the relationship between mind and body and invites us to explore the untapped potential of the human consciousness to heal, transform, and perhaps even shape the world around us. In the early 20th century, the world of science underwent a seismic shift that would forever change our understanding of the universe and our place within it. The discoveries made in quantum physics challenged everything humanity had believed about reality. Quantum mechanics, the branch of physics that studies the behavior of particles at the smallest scales, revealed a world that was fundamentally strange and counterintuitive. At the core of this new understanding was the idea that the act of observation could influence the very behavior of matter. This discovery shook the foundations of classical physics, where the assumption had always been that the universe operated according to fixed, predictable laws, independent of any observer. What quantum physics revealed was something entirely different. Reality, it seemed, was not as fixed and solid as it appeared. Instead, it was influenced by the consciousness of those who observed it. One of the most famous experiments to illustrate this phenomenon is the double-slit experiment, first conducted in 1801 by Thomas Young and later refined by quantum physicists in the 20th century. In this experiment, particles such as electrons or photons are fired at a barrier with two slits. On the other side of the barrier is a screen that detects where the particles land. When the particles are observed as they pass through the slits, they behave like particles, traveling through one slit or the other, producing a predictable pattern on the screen. However, when the particles are not observed, they behave like waves, passing through both slits simultaneously and creating an interference pattern on the screen, as if they were interfering with themselves. The strange thing is that this behavior does not change when the particles are fired one by one. Even in the absence of other particles, the unobserved particle behaves as if it were in two places at once. It is only when it is observed that the particle chooses a specific path, collapsing its wave-like potential into a definite position. This phenomenon suggests that reality, at least on the quantum level, does not exist in a fixed state, but is rather a cloud of probabilities that collapse into a single reality when observed. This strange behavior has profound implications for our understanding of the nature of consciousness. If the mere act of observation can influence the behavior of particles, what does this say about the role of the observer in the creation of reality? Some physicists, such as the late John Wheeler, have argued that the observer is not merely a passive participant in the universe, but an active force that shapes the world around them. Wheeler's famous participatory anthropic principle posits that the universe is not a static, pre-existing reality, but rather a dynamic process that requires conscious observation to bring it into being. In other words, the universe is not fully real until it is observed by a conscious observer. This idea, known as quantum consciousness, suggests that consciousness itself may play an active role in shaping the very fabric of reality, influencing not just how we perceive the world, but how the world itself behaves at the most fundamental level. This line of thinking has been further explored by physicist Roger Penrose, who proposed that consciousness is linked to quantum mechanics through a process called objective reduction. Penrose suggested that the brain operates at the quantum level, and that consciousness arises from quantum effects in the brain's microtubules. According to Penrose, the quantum state of the brain is influenced by an unknown force, which he refers to as objective reduction. This force causes quantum superpositions to collapse into a single state, giving rise to conscious awareness. Penrose's theory, which he developed in collaboration with anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, proposes that consciousness is not just an emergent property of neural activity, but is, in fact, a fundamental aspect of the universe, rooted in quantum processes. While Penrose's theory remains controversial, It has opened up a new avenue of inquiry into the relationship between consciousness and the physical world, suggesting that the mind may not be bound by the classical laws of physics, but could instead operate according to the strange, probabilistic rules of quantum mechanics. The idea that consciousness and quantum mechanics are intertwined raises a number of fascinating questions about the nature of reality itself. If consciousness can influence the behavior of subatomic particles, could it also be capable of influencing larger, macroscopic systems? For example, could our thoughts and intentions have the power to alter physical events in the world around us? This idea is not as far-fetched as it may seem. Experiments in fields such as remote viewing and psychokinesis suggest that the mind may be capable of interacting with the physical world in ways that are not yet fully understood. Remote viewing, in which individuals claim to perceive distant locations or events without the use of their physical senses, has been studied by the military and intelligence agencies for decades. While the scientific community remains skeptical of such phenomena, there is a growing body of evidence that suggests consciousness may be able to transcend time and space, accessing information that should be beyond the reach of our senses. Similarly, psychokinesis, or the ability to influence physical objects with the mind, has been the subject of numerous studies, some of which suggest that it may be possible to manipulate matter using only thought. While the evidence for these phenomena is still inconclusive, they raise the intriguing possibility that consciousness may not be limited to the confines of the brain, but could be a much more powerful force, capable of interacting with the material world in profound ways. This line of thinking also intersects with the concept of the observer effect in quantum physics. If the act of observation can influence the behavior of particles, could the mind, as the ultimate observer, be capable of shaping reality on a larger scale? This idea is explored in the field of quantum consciousness, which posits that consciousness does not simply arise from neural activity in the brain, but is instead a fundamental force that shapes the universe itself. According to this theory, the mind is not merely a passive observer of reality, but an active participant in its creation. By focusing our attention and intention, we may be able to influence the physical world, not just on the quantum level, but also on a macroscopic level. This could explain phenomena, such as the placebo effect, where the belief in healing triggers real physiological changes, or the power of meditation and prayer to bring about tangible changes in health and well-being. The idea that consciousness can influence the physical world raises profound philosophical questions about the nature of reality. If consciousness is a force that shapes the universe, what does this say about the relationship between mind and matter? Is the mind simply a product of the brain, as traditional neuroscience suggests, or is it something more? Could consciousness be a fundamental aspect of the universe, akin to space, time, and matter? These questions challenge our traditional views of reality and invite us to reconsider the relationship between the subjective world of consciousness and the objective world of physical matter. Some philosophers and scientists have proposed that consciousness may be a fundamental property of the universe, an integral part of the fabric of reality itself. This idea, known as panpsychism, suggests that consciousness is not confined to humans and animals, but is a universal property that exists at all levels of reality, from atoms to galaxies. In light of these ideas, the study of consciousness becomes not just a scientific endeavor, but a spiritual and philosophical one as well. The search for understanding the mind and its role in shaping reality is not only about understanding the brain, but also about exploring the very nature of existence. As quantum physics continues to challenge our perceptions of reality, it opens up new avenues for exploring the relationship between consciousness and the universe. Could it be that consciousness is the key to unlocking the greatest mysteries of the universe? As we venture deeper into the realms of quantum mechanics and consciousness, we may find that the boundary between mind and matter is not as rigid as we once believed. The mind, it seems, may not simply be a bystander in the grand drama of existence, but a central player, shaping and influencing the very fabric of reality itself. The more we explore the intersection of consciousness and quantum mechanics, the closer we may come to understanding the true nature of the universe. As we venture deeper into the enigma of consciousness, it becomes increasingly apparent that it is not merely a byproduct of brain activity, but a phenomenon that intersects with some of the most perplexing mysteries of the universe. Over the past century, the study of consciousness has become one of the most debated and controversial fields of scientific inquiry. The more we learn about the brain, the more we realize how little we truly understand about the nature of awareness, perception, and the mind itself. Even with the advent of advanced neuroimaging techniques and cutting-edge brain research, the question of how consciousness arises from the intricate neural networks of the brain remains largely unsolved. Despite all the technological progress, the so-called hard problem of consciousness, why and how subjective experience arises from physical processes, continues to elude us. We know what happens in the brain when we think, feel, or perceive, but we still do not know why it feels like something to have these experiences. The sensation of being aware, of existing within a conscious state, remains one of the greatest mysteries of human existence. And yet, as we dig into this puzzle, we begin to realize that consciousness may be much more than simply an emergent property of the brain. It could be the very lens through which we interact with reality itself. The deeper we explore this topic, the more we encounter experiences that defy our understanding of the material world. Unexplained phenomena, such as paranormal experiences, near-death experiences, NDEs, and even certain forms of mental illness, suggest that consciousness might not be entirely bound by the physical body. There are countless reports of people who claim to have had out-of-body experiences in which they feel as though their consciousness has left their physical body and is observing events from above or from a distant location. These experiences are often described in near-death scenarios, where people who have been clinically dead for a short time report vivid, conscious experiences that transcend the boundaries of their physical senses. Such accounts challenge our conventional understanding of consciousness as something strictly tied to the brain and body. If the brain is the sole seat of consciousness, how can people describe experiences that seem to exist beyond the body's limits? Is it possible that consciousness can exist independently of the brain, at least in certain extreme situations? Perhaps even more intriguing are the reports of people who experience vivid, often transformative, journeys during periods of unconsciousness or deep sleep. These so-called lucid dreaming experiences allow individuals to become fully aware within their dreams, taking control of the dream world and often achieving a sense of personal empowerment or insight that feels just as real as waking life. These experiences raise profound questions about the nature of consciousness and the boundaries between the conscious and unconscious mind. Could it be that the mind is capable of accessing alternate realities or dimensions, not just in dream states, but even during waking hours? Some theorists have suggested that dreams may not simply be a byproduct of the brain processing information from the day, but could be a gateway to other levels of existence, where the conscious mind can explore alternate dimensions or engage with higher forms of awareness. If consciousness can exist outside of the confines of the brain during sleep, could it also transcend the physical world in other ways, tapping into hidden layers of reality that are otherwise imperceptible? The phenomenon of near-death experiences further complicates our understanding of consciousness and its relationship to the body. NDEs have been reported by people who were clinically dead for a short period and then revived, often describing profound, mystical experiences such as traveling through a tunnel, encountering deceased loved ones, or even having a life review. While some attribute these experiences to hallucinations caused by a lack of oxygen in the brain, others argue that they point to something more profound, perhaps a glimpse into an afterlife or the existence of a spiritual realm beyond our physical reality. One of the most intriguing aspects of NDEs is the consistency of the experiences across different cultures, religions, and backgrounds. Despite variations in individual belief systems, people who undergo NDEs often report remarkably similar experiences, including feelings of peace, the sensation of floating above the body, and encounters with otherworldly beings or entities. These commonalities raise the question of whether consciousness might not be limited to the brain at all, but instead could be an integral part of a larger, more universal system. Even in the absence of NDEs or paranormal experiences, there are many other unexplained phenomena that suggest the mind's capacity to transcend the physical. Reports of individuals experiencing psychic phenomena, such as telepathy, clairvoyance, or precognition, further challenge our understanding of consciousness and its boundaries. While mainstream science has generally dismissed such phenomena as pseudoscience, there are countless anecdotal accounts of people who claim to have had verifiable experiences of telepathic communication, predicting future events, or perceiving information that they could not have known through ordinary means. Some scientific studies have even attempted to test these abilities under controlled conditions, leading to mixed results that defy easy explanation. Is it possible that consciousness can access information beyond the conventional limits of time and space? Could the mind have the ability to tap into a universal consciousness, a collective pool of knowledge that transcends individual experience? If this is true, it could have profound implications for our understanding of reality. It would suggest that consciousness is not confined to the brain or the body, but is capable of accessing or even shaping a greater, more interconnected reality. This idea that consciousness might be a key to unlocking the hidden dimensions of existence has been explored by some of the greatest minds in history, including Carl Jung and Albert Einstein. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious, which posits that all humans share a common psychological heritage, touches on the idea that our individual consciousness is connected to a larger, universal field of awareness. Jung believed that the unconscious mind contains archetypes, symbols, and patterns that transcend the individual, providing a deep connection to a collective pool of knowledge and experience. His theory suggests that consciousness may not be a purely individual phenomenon, but something that links us to a larger, collective consciousness. Similarly, Einstein's theory of relativity, which revolutionized our understanding of time and space, suggests that the universe is not a collection of isolated objects, but rather a vast, interconnected web of energy and matter. Could it be that consciousness is similarly interconnected, linking us not just to each other, but to the very fabric of reality itself? As we begin to entertain the possibility that consciousness extends beyond the individual, we must also confront the possibility that it is not merely an emergent property of the brain, but a fundamental aspect of the universe. This idea is at the heart of the theory of panpsychism, which proposes that consciousness is not restricted to humans or animals, but is a fundamental feature of all matter. According to panpsychism, everything, from atoms to galaxies, possesses some form of consciousness. While this theory is still controversial and widely debated, it offers a radically different view of reality, one in which consciousness is woven into the very fabric of existence. If this is true, then the implications for our understanding of reality are nothing short of staggering. It would mean that consciousness is not a product of the brain, but a fundamental force that shapes the universe itself. Our subjective experiences, our thoughts, emotions, and awareness would not be confined to our bodies or brains, but would be part of a larger, interconnected system. This would radically alter our understanding of the universe, suggesting that consciousness is not something separate from the physical world, but an intrinsic part of it. The idea that consciousness is connected to a larger, universal field is echoed in some of the world's most ancient spiritual traditions. In Eastern philosophies, such as Buddhism and Hinduism, the concept of a universal consciousness has been central for millennia. The idea that individual consciousness is an illusion and that we are all part of a greater, collective awareness is a theme that runs through many religious and philosophical systems. Could it be that science is finally catching up to these ancient teachings? As we continue to explore the nature of consciousness and its relationship to the universe, we may find that the answers to the greatest mysteries of existence lie not in the material world, but in the realm of the mind. Perhaps consciousness is not just a passive observer of reality, but a force that shapes and influences the world around us in ways we are only beginning to understand. The more we uncover about consciousness, the more it seems that it holds the key to unlocking the deepest secrets of the universe. The mysteries surrounding the nature of consciousness extend far beyond the confines of scientific inquiry, touching upon realms where science and spirituality intertwine. As we continue to probe the depths of the human mind, it becomes increasingly evident that the experience of being conscious, of having a subjective, inner world, is not something that can be neatly explained through biology or physics alone. For centuries, philosophers, mystics, and spiritual traditions have proposed that consciousness is more than just a product of the brain's electrical activity. They have suggested that consciousness may be a fundamental feature of the universe, an energy or force that transcends the boundaries of individual minds. These ideas, while dismissed by many as speculative, seem to align with some of the most cutting-edge theories in modern science, particularly those emerging from quantum physics and the study of consciousness. As we peel back the layers of what we know about consciousness, it becomes apparent that the more we uncover, the deeper the mystery becomes. One of the most compelling lines of thought in understanding consciousness comes from the study of altered states of consciousness. These states, induced by practices such as meditation, psychedelics, or near-death experiences, suggest that consciousness may not be as confined to our waking reality as we once thought. People who have undergone these altered states often report having profound, life-altering experiences. These experiences include feelings of interconnectedness with all living beings, transcendence of the ego, and encounters with spiritual beings or realms beyond ordinary perception. While such experiences are often dismissed as hallucinations or illusions, they point to the possibility that consciousness, when liberated from the constraints of the brain's ordinary functioning, may be capable of accessing dimensions or realities that are typically hidden from our conscious awareness. If consciousness can be expanded through altered states, might it also be possible for us to tap into other layers of reality under ordinary circumstances? A significant piece of this puzzle lies in the phenomenon of near-death experiences, NDEs. People who have been clinically dead, only to be revived moments later, often report vivid and deeply meaningful experiences that they describe as being beyond the physical world. These experiences commonly include a sensation of floating above the body, traveling through a tunnel, encountering deceased loved ones, or feeling an overwhelming sense of peace and unity with the universe. The consistency of these reports across cultures and belief systems suggests that NDEs may not simply be a product of brain chemistry in crisis, as some would argue, but rather indicative of a deeper, more universal truth about consciousness itself. What's most intriguing is that, in some cases, individuals report experiencing events or hearing conversations that occurred in the physical world during their clinical death, events that they could not have possibly known about unless their consciousness was operating outside the confines of their body. This raises a profound question. Could consciousness persist beyond the physical body, tapping into some deeper, universal field of awareness? Similarly, the study of psychedelics has revealed another layer of consciousness that many scientists and spiritual practitioners are now exploring. Psychedelics, substances like LSD, psilocybin, the active compound in magic mushrooms, and DMT, have long been known for their ability to radically alter perception, thought, and sense of self. Users of these substances often report experiencing profound, mystical experiences that feel more real than ordinary waking life. These experiences often involve encounters with seemingly intelligent, autonomous entities, as well as a deep sense of unity with the universe. For many, the experiences produced by psychedelics have led to a shift in consciousness that forever alters their worldview, allowing them to perceive the interconnectedness of all things. Some researchers argue that psychedelics do not merely induce hallucinations, but instead unlock hidden dimensions of reality, revealing layers of consciousness that are typically veiled from our everyday experience. If this is true, It suggests that consciousness might not be confined to the physical brain at all, but could instead be a part of a vast, interconnected network of awareness that transcends the individual self. These altered states of consciousness and the experiences they produce align closely with certain ancient spiritual traditions, which have long proposed that the physical world is just one layer of reality, with higher, non-material realms of existence accessible to those who can transcend the limitations of ordinary perception. The idea that consciousness can travel beyond the body and access these higher realms is central to many mystical and esoteric belief systems, including those found in Hinduism, Buddhism, and various Western occult traditions. In these systems, consciousness is seen as a vehicle for exploring the mysteries of the universe, transcending the mundane, and achieving union with the divine. Such experiences of transcendence often lead to a profound sense of meaning, as individuals report feeling as though they are tapping into a universal consciousness or cosmic intelligence. These experiences of altered consciousness challenge the materialist paradigm, which posits that consciousness is purely a product of the brain's electrical and chemical processes. If consciousness can exist independently of the brain, as suggested by some of the reports of NDEs and psychedelic experiences, then what does this mean for our understanding of the nature of reality? Could consciousness be a fundamental aspect of the universe, one that exists beyond the individual mind? This question has led to the development of a new field of study called panpsychism, which posits that consciousness is not something that arises only in complex organisms, but is an inherent quality of all matter. According to panpsychism, even the smallest particles in the universe, atoms, electrons, and quarks, have some form of consciousness or awareness. This view radically reinterprets our understanding of the universe, suggesting that consciousness is not confined to living beings, but is woven into the very fabric of existence itself. If consciousness is indeed a fundamental feature of the universe, it could explain why the act of observation in quantum mechanics seems to influence the behavior of particles. The observer, in this case, might not be a passive spectator, but an active participant in shaping the physical world. As science continues to probe the relationship between consciousness and the physical world, the line between objective reality and subjective experience becomes increasingly blurred. The findings from quantum physics, where particles can exist in multiple states at once until they are observed, suggest that consciousness plays a role in creating reality. The famous double-slit experiment, in which particles behave differently when they are observed, hints at the possibility that reality is not as fixed and immutable as we once believed. Instead, it may be influenced by the observer's consciousness. This idea that consciousness is not a passive observer but an active participant in the creation of reality has profound implications for our understanding of the universe. It suggests that the mind is not merely a product of the brain, but is, in fact, a force that can shape and interact with the material world. Moreover, the idea that consciousness is a key to understanding the nature of reality opens up exciting possibilities for the future. If consciousness is not confined to the brain, and if it is, in fact, a fundamental aspect of the universe, this could lead to breakthroughs in fields as diverse as physics, neuroscience, and psychology. It could lead to a greater understanding of how consciousness interacts with the physical world, possibly unlocking new ways to harness the power of the mind to influence physical processes. Could we learn to tap into these hidden dimensions of consciousness, altering our perception of reality and even shaping the world around us? This would be a radical departure from the current scientific paradigm, which treats consciousness as an afterthought in the study of the mind and body. In conclusion, the study of consciousness is not merely an academic pursuit. It is a journey into the heart of reality itself. As we continue to explore the nature of consciousness, we may find that the answers to some of the most profound questions about existence lie not in the physical world, but in the realm of the mind. Consciousness may not be something that arises from the brain, but could be an intrinsic part of the universe, an energy or force that shapes and influences reality at the most fundamental level. As we expand our understanding of the mind and its potential, we may uncover truths that have been hidden from us for centuries, unlocking new possibilities for how we understand ourselves and the world around us. Whether we are exploring the depths of the brain, investigating altered states of consciousness, or contemplating the implications of quantum mechanics, one thing is clear. Consciousness is the key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe. The more we understand about consciousness, the more we understand about the very fabric of reality itself. Throughout history, there's been a long-standing debate about the relationship between consciousness and the physical world. For much of our scientific understanding, consciousness has been viewed primarily as a product of the brain. Yet, as our knowledge of both consciousness and the universe expands, we are forced to reconsider this assumption. In recent years, there's been a growing body of evidence suggesting that consciousness is not merely the result of neural processes, but may be a fundamental aspect of the universe itself. This shift in perspective is not just academic. It is reshaping the way we think about reality, existence, and the very nature of life itself. The question now is not just what consciousness is, but how it relates to the fabric of the cosmos. Could it be that consciousness is not confined to our minds, but is somehow linked to the very structure of the universe, acting as a key that unlocks the mysteries of existence? At the heart of this shift is the realization that the traditional materialistic view of the universe, where everything can be explained purely through physical processes, may not be enough to explain the complex phenomena we observe in the world around us. While this view has served us well in understanding many aspects of nature, it leaves many questions unanswered. For example, how do we account for the subjective nature of experience, or qualia, the way in which we each experience the world in our own unique way? No matter how much we study the brain, no scientific theory can fully explain why a particular stimulus should feel like something to the person experiencing it. This remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of science. How does the brain, a physical object made of matter, give rise to the rich, subjective world of thoughts, emotions, and perceptions? This question has led many to reconsider the fundamental nature of consciousness, and whether it is indeed something that exists independent of the brain. One of the key arguments that has emerged in recent years is the idea that consciousness might not be a byproduct of the brain at all. Instead, it may be a primary feature of the universe, something inherent in the very fabric of reality. This view, known as panpsychism, posits that consciousness is not something that emerges only in complex organisms, but is a fundamental characteristic of all matter. According to this theory, consciousness exists not just in humans and animals, but also in inanimate objects, particles, and even forces of nature. This radical idea challenges the way we have traditionally thought about consciousness. If consciousness is fundamental to the universe, it suggests that all things, from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy, are infused with some form of awareness. This theory also suggests that consciousness is not something that happens inside the brain, but something that is spread throughout the universe, perhaps in ways that we are only beginning to understand. The implications of this idea are profound. If consciousness is a fundamental feature of reality, then it would mean that everything in the universe, from the smallest subatomic particles to the vast expanses of space, is somehow conscious, even if only in a primitive or subtle way. This challenges the traditional scientific view that consciousness is a product of complex neural networks and brain functions. Instead, it suggests that consciousness is woven into the very structure of reality itself, operating on a level that we may not yet be able to fully comprehend. If this is true, then the mind may not be limited to the individual brain, but could be part of a universal consciousness that connects all things. This raises the intriguing possibility that human consciousness might be able to tap into this larger, universal awareness, allowing us to perceive dimensions of reality that are normally hidden from our perception. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence for this view comes from the study of quantum mechanics. As we have seen, Quantum physics has revealed a world that is strange and mysterious, where particles can exist in multiple states at once, and where the act of observation seems to influence the outcome of experiments. The double-slit experiment, in which particles behave like waves when unobserved and like particles when observed, suggests that reality is not fixed but exists as a cloud of probabilities until it is observed. This phenomenon has led some physicists to propose that consciousness is not merely an observer of the physical world, but plays an active role in shaping it. Some even argue that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of quantum mechanics, influencing the behavior of particles and the formation of reality itself. The idea that consciousness is tied to quantum mechanics is further supported by the work of physicists such as Roger Penrose, who has suggested that the brain operates at the quantum level, with consciousness arising from quantum processes in the brain's microtubules. According to Penrose's theory, consciousness is not just an emergent property of the brain, but is instead linked to the fundamental structure of the universe. This idea challenges the classical view that consciousness is purely a byproduct of neural activity and suggests that consciousness may be a much more powerful and pervasive force, capable of interacting with the physical world on a fundamental level. What is particularly intriguing about this idea is that it aligns with certain mystical and spiritual traditions, which have long posited that consciousness is not confined to the individual mind, but is part of a larger, universal field of awareness. In many spiritual traditions, consciousness is seen as a bridge between the physical world and higher realms of existence. For example, in Eastern philosophies such as Hinduism and Buddhism, consciousness is viewed as an infinite, interconnected energy that transcends individual ego and connects all beings. These traditions suggest that the ultimate goal of human life is to realize this interconnectedness, achieving a state of unity with the universe and the divine. In this sense, consciousness is not just a private experience, but a universal phenomenon that connects all of creation. This idea is also reflected in the work of contemporary thinkers, such as David Chalmers, who has suggested that consciousness may be a fundamental property of the universe, much like space, time, or mass. Chalmers argues that we need to rethink our understanding of consciousness and move beyond the idea that it is simply a byproduct of the brain. Instead, he suggests that consciousness might be a fundamental aspect of reality, one that exists at the most basic level of the universe and is woven into the very fabric of existence. This idea has profound implications for the way we understand both the mind and the universe. It suggests that consciousness is not just a passive observer of the world, but an active participant in the unfolding of reality. If this is the case, then it could mean that we are all connected to a larger, universal consciousness, and that our minds are part of a vast, interconnected network of awareness. The more we explore these ideas, the more we begin to realize that consciousness may be the key to unlocking the greatest mysteries of the universe. If consciousness is indeed a fundamental aspect of reality, then it could provide us with the answers to some of the most profound questions in science and philosophy. For example, could consciousness be the missing link that connects the mind and the body, the subjective and the objective, the individual and the collective? Could it be that consciousness is the bridge between the physical world and the spiritual dimensions of existence? If so, then the exploration of consciousness could open up entirely new realms of scientific inquiry, allowing us to explore the hidden layers of reality that lie beyond the reach of our ordinary senses. At the same time, these ideas challenge us to rethink our relationship to the universe. If consciousness is a universal force that connects all things, then it suggests that we are not separate from the world around us, but are part of a larger, interconnected system. This view of consciousness encourages us to move beyond the ego, recognizing that our individual selves are not the center of the universe, but are part of a larger cosmic web. It encourages us to embrace a sense of unity with all beings and all things, fostering a deeper understanding of our place in the cosmos. As we continue to explore the nature of consciousness and its relationship to the universe, we may find that we are not just passive observers of reality, but active participants in the creation of the world around us. Our consciousness may be the key to unlocking the hidden dimensions of existence, allowing us to access a deeper, more interconnected reality. As we explore these ideas further, we may find that consciousness is not just an emergent property of the brain, but a fundamental force that shapes the universe itself. This realization could change the way we understand everything from quantum physics to spirituality, offering a new perspective on the mysteries of life, death, and the nature of existence itself. The journey into the heart of consciousness is not just a scientific endeavor. It is a quest to understand the very essence of reality itself. The concept of consciousness as a fundamental force of the universe raises significant questions about the nature of reality itself. As we continue to peel back the layers of the known world, we are confronted with mysteries that challenge our traditional understanding of the material and the spiritual. The more we learn about consciousness, the more we realize that its boundaries may not be confined to our minds or even to the human experience. In fact, consciousness might not be something that arises solely from the brain at all, but could be an inherent aspect of the universe itself, woven into the fabric of all existence. This view of consciousness as a fundamental property of reality changes the way we perceive everything from the smallest particles to the vastness of the cosmos. If consciousness is indeed fundamental to the universe, it would suggest that the physical world is not the entire story. There may be hidden dimensions of existence that remain largely imperceptible to our senses. In exploring these dimensions, the question arises: could consciousness be the key to unlocking the deeper mysteries of the universe? The more we delve into the quantum world, the stranger things become. Quantum mechanics, the study of the smallest particles and forces of nature, has already shown us that the universe behaves in ways that defy common sense. Particles can exist in multiple states at once, and the act of observation itself seems to play a crucial role in determining the outcome of certain experiments. The famous double-slit experiment is one such example, where particles such as electrons behave as waves when not observed and as particles when observed. This suggests that consciousness, or at least the act of observation, has a fundamental impact on the way reality unfolds at the quantum level. This phenomenon hints at a reality where the mind is not simply a passive observer, but an active participant in shaping the world around us. If consciousness has the power to influence the smallest particles in the universe, could it also affect larger, macroscopic systems? Some researchers believe that this is possible. The notion that consciousness could influence the physical world has been explored in fields like psychokinesis, the ability to move or manipulate objects with the mind alone. While many remain skeptical of such claims, there are reports of individuals who believe they have experienced such phenomena under controlled conditions. In these instances, the power of the mind is thought to affect the physical world in ways that science is still struggling to understand. If consciousness can indeed influence the behavior of matter on a quantum level, what other possibilities might this open up? Could it be that our thoughts and intentions are not merely reflections of an internal mental state, but can actually interact with the world around us, shaping events and influencing outcomes? One of the most profound implications of consciousness being a fundamental force is the possibility that it is connected to all things. If consciousness is not confined to individual brains or bodies, then could it be that all of reality is interconnected by a vast, universal consciousness? This idea has been explored by some of the greatest minds in history. In particular, the philosopher and mystic Carl Jung proposed the idea of the collective unconscious, suggesting that human consciousness is connected to a deeper, shared layer of knowledge and experience. According to Jung, this collective unconscious is not just a storehouse of personal memories, but a deeper, universal field that transcends the individual. It is a reservoir of archetypes and symbols that are shared by all humans, regardless of culture or time period. This concept echoes the idea of a universal consciousness that underlies all of reality, connecting each individual mind to a larger cosmic intelligence. Similarly, the physicist David Bohm developed the concept of the implicate order, a theoretical framework in which the universe is viewed as a unified whole, with all phenomena interconnected at a deeper level. According to Bohm, the apparent separation between objects and events is merely an illusion, created by our limited perception of the world. In the implicate order, everything is folded into everything else, and reality is not fragmented, but rather a single, continuous whole. If consciousness is indeed part of this unified field, it suggests that all minds are connected, that each individual is not a separate entity, but an expression of a larger, collective awareness. This view of consciousness aligns with some of the mystical and spiritual traditions, which have long proposed that the ultimate truth of existence is one of unity and interconnectedness. In these traditions, the goal of spiritual practice is to transcend the individual ego and realize one's oneness with the divine, with the cosmos, and with all living beings. This idea of a universal consciousness or a cosmic mind is not new. It has been present in various forms throughout human history, from ancient mysticism to modern physics. In Eastern philosophies, such as Hinduism and Buddhism, the concept of a universal consciousness is central to their teachings. In Hinduism, the concept of Brahman represents the ultimate reality, an infinite, all-encompassing consciousness that is the source of all existence. Similarly, in Buddhism, the idea of interconnectedness and the dissolution of the individual self is a key aspect of enlightenment. These traditions suggest that the ego, the sense of being a separate, individual self, is an illusion, and that true spiritual liberation comes from realizing the oneness of all things. This perspective aligns closely with modern scientific theories that propose consciousness is not confined to the individual mind, but is instead a universal force that connects all beings. The implications of a universal consciousness go beyond just the realms of philosophy and spirituality. They challenge our understanding of the physical world itself. If consciousness is a fundamental aspect of the universe, then it would suggest that the universe is not a random, chaotic collection of matter, but a highly organized system that is infused with intelligence. Some physicists, such as Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, have proposed that consciousness may be linked to the quantum structure of the brain. In their theory, consciousness arises from quantum processes in the brain's microtubules, which are tiny structures within neurons. They suggest that the brain operates at the quantum level, where consciousness may interact with the fabric of reality itself. This theory, while still controversial, has sparked a great deal of interest and has led to further exploration of the relationship between consciousness and quantum mechanics. But even outside the realm of quantum physics, there are other examples of phenomena that suggest a deeper connection between consciousness and the physical world. One such phenomenon is the placebo effect, in which a person experiences a real improvement in their health simply because they believe they are receiving treatment, even if that treatment is a sugar pill or an inert substance. This suggests that the mind has the power to influence the body in ways that we do not fully understand. Similarly, there are reports of individuals who have experienced spontaneous healing or miraculous recoveries, often after a profound shift in consciousness. These events challenge the materialist view that the body and mind are separate entities, and instead point to the possibility that consciousness and the body are deeply interconnected, with the mind playing an active role in shaping the physical world. The idea that consciousness is a fundamental force of the universe raises many questions about the nature of existence and our place in it. If consciousness is indeed universal, then it suggests that we are all connected to each other, to the earth, and to the cosmos in ways that transcend the limits of time and space. This interconnectedness challenges our individualistic worldview and invites us to reconsider the nature of reality. It suggests that our thoughts, feelings, and actions have far-reaching consequences, not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. As we come to understand consciousness as a universal force, we begin to see that we are not isolated beings, but integral parts of a larger cosmic system. This realization opens up new possibilities for how we approach life, relationships, and the very nature of reality. In conclusion, the exploration of consciousness as a fundamental force is just beginning. As we continue to probe the mysteries of the mind, the universe, and the connection between the two, we may find that the answers to some of life's most profound questions lie not in the material world, but in the realm of consciousness itself. If consciousness is indeed a universal, interconnected force, it could open up new pathways for understanding the deepest mysteries of existence, and ultimately, for discovering our true place in the cosmos. The journey to understand consciousness is not just a scientific endeavor. It is a philosophical and spiritual journey, one that invites us to question our assumptions about the nature of reality and our place within it. As we continue on this path, we may uncover truths that challenge everything we thought we knew about the world, and in doing so, come closer to understanding the true nature of the universe and our place within it. As we delve deeper into the nature of consciousness, it becomes apparent that the more we attempt to define and measure it, the more elusive it becomes. The complexity of the human mind is not just a puzzle of neural activity or chemical reactions. It is a living, breathing enigma that seems to transcend the confines of the brain. Consciousness is, perhaps, the ultimate frontier of scientific inquiry, a domain that stretches far beyond the physical sciences into the realm of philosophy, metaphysics, and even the mystical. Despite all our advancements, the scientific community remains divided on how best to approach the study of consciousness, with some asserting that it is purely an emergent property of the brain, while others suggest that it is a fundamental force of nature, existing independently of the physical body. Yet, regardless of which path we take, one thing is certain. Consciousness seems to be far more than we can comprehend, offering a glimpse into the deeper structure of reality itself. One of the most fascinating aspects of consciousness is its ability to shape our perception of reality. Every waking moment, we interpret the world through our senses, yet the brain does not simply passively record this information. Instead, consciousness actively constructs our perception, filling in gaps and creating a cohesive narrative from the raw data provided by our senses. This process is so seamless that we rarely give it second thought, but it is, in essence, an act of creation. Our conscious mind continually edits and interprets our sensory input, making it not only a passive receiver of information, but also an active creator of the world we experience. The famous philosopher Immanuel Kant suggested that the mind does not simply perceive the world as it is, but organizes and structures our experiences in ways that are influenced by both our biology and our consciousness itself. This process of constructing reality highlights the idea that consciousness may be more than just a reflection of the world around us. It may be a participant in shaping the very nature of that world. This concept becomes even more intriguing when we consider the role of consciousness in phenomena that seem to defy explanation. Take, for example, the mysterious world of psychic phenomena, telepathy, precognition, and psychokinesis, phenomena that suggest that consciousness might not be bound by time and space as we traditionally understand them. There are countless reports from individuals who claim to have experienced these abilities firsthand, as well as instances where individuals appear to have had access to information that they could not have possibly known through conventional means. While mainstream science often dismisses such phenomena as pseudoscience or coincidence, there are enough documented cases to suggest that the nature of consciousness may be far more expansive than we currently appreciate. Could it be that the human mind possesses latent abilities that transcend the physical limits of the brain? And if so, what does this imply about the nature of consciousness itself? Perhaps consciousness, rather than being a mere byproduct of brain activity, is a force that connects us to something much larger, something beyond the boundaries of space and time. As we venture further into the unknown, the phenomenon of synchronicity offers another compelling clue to the vast potential of consciousness. Synchronicity, a term coined by Carl Jung, refers to the meaningful coincidence of events that seem to have no causal relationship, yet appear to be deeply connected in some way. Jung's theory of synchronicity suggests that the universe is not just a random collection of events, but is instead interconnected in ways that we cannot fully understand. In moments of synchronicity, individuals often experience a deep sense of connection to the world around them, as though their thoughts and the external world are aligned in a profound and meaningful way. This experience challenges the materialist view of the universe, which holds that everything occurs as a result of physical cause and effect. If synchronicity is a real phenomenon, it suggests that there is an intelligence at work behind the scenes, a force that connects individuals, events, and even ideas across time and space. Could this force be the same consciousness that permeates all things? Could it be that the universe itself is imbued with a kind of cosmic awareness, one that ties everything together in a way that transcends our ordinary understanding of reality? The idea that consciousness might be a universal force that permeates all things finds resonance in various spiritual traditions, particularly in the concept of the Akashic records. According to certain esoteric philosophies, the Akashic records are a metaphysical compendium of all human experiences, thoughts, and actions that have ever occurred. It is said to be an invisible realm of consciousness that exists beyond time and space, where all knowledge is stored and can be accessed by those who are spiritually attuned. This concept, which has roots in both Eastern and Western mysticism, suggests that consciousness is not confined to the individual mind, but is part of a vast, collective field of awareness that transcends time, space, and the physical body. What is truly fascinating is that many individuals report having access to these records through deep meditation or altered states of consciousness, experiencing profound insights into the nature of reality, the universe, and even the lives of others. Could it be that this so-called Akashic realm is simply an expression of the universal consciousness we are exploring? If consciousness is indeed a fundamental force of the universe, perhaps the Akashic records are a manifestation of this consciousness, offering us a glimpse into the deeper fabric of existence. Further support for the idea of a universal consciousness comes from the realm of quantum physics. The more we explore the quantum world, the more we encounter phenomena that seem to defy the conventional rules of physics. Quantum entanglement, for example, describes a situation in which two particles become so deeply interconnected that the state of one particle is immediately influenced by the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. This phenomenon, often referred to as spooky action at a distance, suggests that information can travel instantaneously across vast distances, bypassing the limitations of time and space. Some physicists, such as Erwin Schrödinger and David Bohm, have suggested that quantum entanglement may be indicative of a deeper, non-local reality in which everything is interconnected. If this is the case, it is possible that consciousness plays a key role in this entanglement, acting as the medium through which information is exchanged and reality is manifested. This would align with the notion of a universal consciousness, one that is not bound by the limitations of space and time, but instead operates across all dimensions of existence. The idea that consciousness may be connected to the quantum field opens up exciting possibilities for new scientific discoveries. If consciousness is truly a fundamental force of the universe, then it may hold the key to understanding not just the mind, but the very nature of reality itself. Could consciousness be the missing link between the material world and the spiritual dimensions? Could it be that by exploring the depths of consciousness, we can access hidden realms of existence that are otherwise imperceptible? Some scientists and mystics believe that this is indeed the case. The study of consciousness, they argue, could lead to breakthroughs in everything from the nature of time and space to the understanding of life after death. If consciousness is universal, then it could be the key to unlocking the deepest mysteries of the cosmos, allowing us to transcend the limitations of our physical existence and tap into the greater, interconnected fabric of reality. One of the most profound implications of this exploration is the idea that consciousness may be a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. If consciousness is indeed universal and interconnected, then it may be the vehicle through which we experience the divine, the eternal, and the infinite. Throughout history, mystics and spiritual seekers have reported encounters with higher dimensions of consciousness, in which they felt a profound connection to the divine and to all living beings. These experiences often transcend the boundaries of time and space, offering glimpses of an ultimate reality that is beyond ordinary human comprehension. If consciousness is indeed the key to accessing these realms, then it suggests that the true nature of reality is far more complex and mysterious than we can possibly imagine. The concept of universal consciousness also raises important ethical questions about our relationship to the world around us. If everything in the universe is connected through consciousness, then it suggests that our thoughts, actions, and intentions have far-reaching consequences that we may not fully understand. This interconnectedness challenges the individualistic worldview that has dominated Western thought for centuries, encouraging us to recognize our deep responsibility to one another and to the planet. As we come to understand the profound role that consciousness plays in shaping reality, we may find ourselves more attuned to the energies and forces that connect all things, encouraging a more compassionate and harmonious relationship with the world. As we continue our exploration of consciousness, we are forced to confront questions that extend far beyond the boundaries of science. What is the nature of the soul? Does consciousness persist beyond death? What lies beyond the veil of physical reality? While science may not yet have the answers, the pursuit of these questions is perhaps the most important journey we can undertake. The study of consciousness is not just an intellectual pursuit. It is a journey into the very heart of existence, one that invites us to question everything we think we know about the world and our place within it. As we continue to unlock the mysteries of consciousness, we may find that the answers to these questions lie not in the material world, but in the vast, interconnected field of awareness that transcends time, space, and the physical body. And in doing so, we may come to understand that consciousness is not just a product of the brain, but the very key to understanding the mysteries of the universe itself. As we venture further into the study of consciousness, we find ourselves confronted with ideas that challenge the very foundations of how we view existence, reality, and our place in the cosmos. The more we probe the depths of the human mind, the more we uncover layers of complexity that go beyond our understanding of the brain's biological processes. For centuries, consciousness was regarded as a mere byproduct of the brain's electrical activity, a transient experience generated by neurons firing in response to external stimuli. However, as we progress in our exploration of quantum physics, neuroscience, and esoteric traditions, a more profound and unsettling possibility emerges. Consciousness might not be confined to the brain at all, and might instead be a fundamental, pervasive force in the universe. This shift in perspective invites us to reconsider everything we know about the mind, the brain, and the universe itself. If consciousness is not merely an emergent property of the brain, as traditionally thought, but rather an inherent feature of reality, then the implications are profound. We might have been looking at consciousness all wrong, misunderstanding its true nature, its origins, and its connection to the universe. The current scientific consensus still largely adheres to the materialistic view that consciousness is something that arises from complex neural networks, a byproduct of evolution designed to help organisms navigate the world. But increasingly, anomalies and paradoxes in quantum physics, as well as reports from those who have experienced altered states of consciousness, are causing us to question this simplistic explanation. Consider the baffling nature of quantum mechanics itself. At the heart of quantum theory lies the idea of superposition, the ability of a quantum particle to exist in multiple states simultaneously, a phenomenon that runs counter to our everyday experience of the world. But it gets even more perplexing. The act of observation seems to play a critical role in determining the outcome of quantum experiments. The famous double-slit experiment, where particles behave as both waves and particles, depending on whether they are observed, has led many physicists to propose that consciousness itself plays a part in shaping reality. This idea, that the act of observing the universe somehow changes its behavior, suggests that consciousness is not just a passive observer, but an active participant in the unfolding of reality. The connection between consciousness and the fabric of reality is further supported by the strange phenomenon of quantum entanglement. When two particles become entangled, their states are interdependent, no matter how far apart they are. This phenomenon defies the classical understanding of space and time, suggesting that information can travel instantaneously across vast distances. The idea that particles, separated by light years, can influence each other in real time opens the door to a radically different understanding of reality. Could consciousness be the force that links these distant particles together, acting as a bridge that transcends the limits of space and time? If consciousness is indeed a universal field, it could provide a means of communication and connection that exists beyond the physical constraints of the universe. While quantum mechanics points to a profound connection between consciousness and reality, there are other areas of inquiry that also suggest a deeper relationship between the two. For instance, altered states of consciousness, induced through meditation, psychedelics, or near-death experiences, often lead to encounters with otherworldly realms, spiritual beings, or even glimpses of a hidden, interconnected dimension of reality. People who have undergone such experiences frequently report feeling a sense of unity with the universe, experiencing a dissolution of the ego, and having access to a level of insight and awareness that seems to transcend the limitations of the individual self. These experiences, while subjective, are often deeply transformative and suggest that the mind can access deeper layers of reality beyond ordinary waking consciousness. Could it be that these altered states offer a glimpse into the true nature of consciousness itself, one that exists beyond the physical brain and connects us to a larger, cosmic intelligence? If consciousness is indeed universal, as some theorists suggest, then these experiences might be a temporary window into the broader, collective consciousness that permeates all of existence. This would mean that our ordinary sense of self, the individual ego, is only a small, isolated aspect of a much greater consciousness that transcends time, space, and the individual mind. It might be that when we enter altered states of consciousness, we temporarily tune into this larger field of awareness, allowing us to access knowledge, wisdom, and experiences that are normally hidden from our perception. This idea of a universal consciousness also aligns with certain esoteric traditions and spiritual teachings. For example, ancient wisdom traditions, such as those found in Hinduism, Buddhism, and various mystical schools, propose that the ultimate truth of existence is one of unity and interconnectedness. In these systems, consciousness is not confined to the individual mind, but is part of a larger, all-encompassing field of awareness that connects all things. This universal consciousness is often described as a cosmic intelligence, a force that underlies and governs the structure of the universe. The aim of spiritual practice, in these traditions, is to transcend the ego and realize one's oneness with this universal consciousness, achieving enlightenment and liberation from the cycle of suffering. Interestingly, modern quantum physics seems to be converging with these ancient teachings in some ways. The idea that consciousness is a universal field of awareness, rather than a product of the brain, mirrors the mystic understanding of the universe as an interconnected whole, where all things are linked by a common force. The concept of the implicate order, proposed by physicist David Bohm, suggests that the universe is not fragmented into separate objects and events, but is instead a unified, interconnected system in which all phenomena are folded into one another. This view of reality, in which everything is connected, is strikingly similar to the spiritual notion of an all-pervasive consciousness that binds the cosmos together. If consciousness is truly universal and interconnected, then it may be the key to understanding not only the mysteries of the mind, but the very fabric of the universe itself. Furthermore, the study of consciousness also raises important questions about the nature of existence beyond the physical body. If consciousness is not confined to the brain, does it persist after death? This question has been a subject of speculation for millennia, but recent research into near-death experiences, NDEs, has provided intriguing clues. Many individuals who have undergone NDEs report profound, life-changing experiences, such as a sense of leaving the body, encountering deceased loved ones, or experiencing a feeling of unity with the universe. These experiences are often accompanied by a sense of peace and transcendence, suggesting that consciousness may continue beyond the physical body. Some researchers have even suggested that the experience of dying may represent a transition to another realm of existence, one in which consciousness operates beyond the constraints of time and space. The question of whether consciousness persists after death challenges our current understanding of life, death, and the nature of reality. If consciousness is not tied to the brain, then the death of the body may not necessarily mean the end of consciousness. Instead, it could be that consciousness is a timeless, formless energy that exists independently of the physical body, continuing its existence in some other form after death. This idea resonates with various spiritual and philosophical teachings, which suggest that death is not the end of consciousness, but a transition to another stage of existence. Whether through reincarnation, the afterlife, or some other form of continuity, consciousness may persist in ways that are beyond our current understanding. These possibilities invite us to reconsider our relationship to the world and to the mysteries of existence. If consciousness is indeed a universal, timeless force that connects all things, then it suggests that we are not isolated beings, cut off from the universe. Instead, we are part of a larger, interconnected web of awareness that transcends time, space, and the individual self. This realization opens up new possibilities for how we relate to each other, to the natural world, and to the cosmos. It invites us to recognize the sacredness of all life and the interconnectedness of all beings. It also calls us to expand our consciousness, to tap into the deeper layers of awareness that lie beyond the surface of everyday experience. As we explore these ideas, we begin to see that consciousness is not just a passive byproduct of the brain, but an active, dynamic force that shapes our perception of reality and connects us to the universe in profound ways. The more we understand consciousness, the more we realize that it is the key to unlocking the mysteries of existence. Whether through the study of quantum mechanics, altered states of consciousness, or spiritual teachings, we are on the brink of a new understanding of the nature of reality, one that recognizes consciousness as a fundamental force that shapes both our minds and the universe. As we continue to probe these mysteries, we may uncover answers that challenge everything we thought we knew about life, death, and the very nature of existence. In doing so, we may begin to unlock the full potential of consciousness, both within ourselves and in the universe around us. The exploration of consciousness as a universal and integral part of the cosmos has ignited numerous debates within both scientific and philosophical circles. As we move away from traditional materialistic views, we begin to see that consciousness is not just an isolated phenomenon of individual human experience, but instead may be a cosmic force that binds all of reality together. In this sense, consciousness might be far more pervasive and interconnected with the universe than we have previously imagined. This realization opens up new questions about the very nature of existence, the interrelation between mind and matter, and the potential for humanity to tap into these cosmic forces in ways that transcend the limitations of the body and mind. If consciousness truly exists at the very foundation of reality, it suggests that the mind might not only shape our perceptions, but might also have the power to influence and even create the world around us. Consider, for a moment, the idea that consciousness is not just confined to individual minds, but is part of an all-encompassing field of awareness. This concept aligns with the ancient philosophical idea of a cosmic mind, which is found in many spiritual traditions, including Eastern philosophies like Hinduism and Buddhism, as well as in Western esoteric thought. In these traditions, consciousness is not limited to the individual self, but is a universal force that permeates all things, from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy. The mind, according to this view, is not separate from the cosmos, but is an expression of it, a microcosm of the greater, infinite consciousness that governs the universe. In such a framework, human beings are not merely isolated creatures experiencing reality in a detached manner, but are deeply interconnected with the very fabric of existence itself. We are not separate from the world we inhabit, but are in essence part of the same ongoing cosmic process. This perspective challenges the conventional scientific view that consciousness is solely a product of the brain and is limited to the neural processes within our bodies. If consciousness is a fundamental aspect of the universe, then it raises the possibility that we may be tapping into something far greater than the biological brain. This line of thinking is supported by recent theories in quantum physics, where researchers like David Bohm and Erwin Schrödinger have suggested that the universe operates as an interconnected whole and that all phenomena are not independent, but are part of a greater, underlying unity. According to Bohm's implicate order, the apparent fragmentation of the universe, the separation between objects, events, and beings, is merely an illusion. Everything, on a deeper level, is inextricably linked, forming a unified whole. This idea resonates strongly with mystical traditions that view reality as a web of interconnected energies, where everything is a reflection of the same fundamental consciousness. If we accept the possibility that consciousness is universal and interconnected, it forces us to rethink the very nature of what it means to exist and how our minds are related to the universe around us. In light of these insights, the question arises, can we tap into this greater consciousness? Is it possible for the individual human mind to access or even influence the universal field of awareness that underlies all of existence? Throughout history, various esoteric traditions have suggested that human beings have the potential to access higher states of consciousness, enabling them to perceive hidden dimensions of reality. Practices such as meditation, prayer, and altered states induced by psychedelics have long been associated with glimpses of a broader, more unified view of the universe. These experiences are often described as moments of profound insight, where individuals report feelings of oneness with the universe, encounters with divine beings, or access to hidden knowledge that transcends the limitations of ordinary perception. Could it be that these altered states of consciousness are moments when the human mind taps into the greater, universal consciousness that is interwoven with all of reality? If so, these experiences might not be mere fantasies or hallucinations, but authentic encounters with the deeper layers of existence that remain largely hidden from our everyday awareness. This idea is further supported by the work of modern researchers who are beginning to explore the neurological and quantum underpinnings of mystical experiences. Neuroscientists have found that certain areas of the brain, such as the default mode network, are activated during experiences of unity and interconnectedness, which are commonly reported by individuals undergoing mystical states. The default mode network is associated with self-reflection and the sense of ego, and its activation during mystical experiences often correlates with the dissolution of the ego, which is a key feature of many spiritual awakenings. This dissolution of the ego might not be a sign of mental dysfunction, as some might believe, but rather a temporary liberation from the confines of the individual self. During such experiences, individuals often report feeling as though they have transcended their physical form, entering a state of pure consciousness that connects them to all things. In this sense, mystical experiences might provide us with a glimpse into the universal consciousness, suggesting that the mind is capable of accessing higher states of awareness that go beyond the confines of the body and the brain. The implications of this idea are far-reaching, as they suggest that our understanding of consciousness, and by extension, reality, might be far more expansive than we currently appreciate. If consciousness is indeed a universal force, then it could mean that everything in the universe is infused with a degree of awareness, from the smallest particles to the largest cosmic structures. This would radically alter our perception of life, death, and existence, suggesting that the universe is not a cold, indifferent machine, but a living, conscious entity. Such a perspective invites us to reimagine our relationship to the world around us, as it implies that we are not separate from the cosmos, but are part of an ongoing, interconnected process of creation and evolution. This view of the universe challenges the Cartesian dualism that has dominated Western thought for centuries, the idea that mind and matter are separate, and instead proposes that mind and matter are intimately connected, each influencing and shaping the other. In practical terms, this new perspective on consciousness opens up exciting possibilities for scientific discovery. If consciousness is a fundamental force of the universe, then it could be the key to understanding some of the most profound mysteries of existence, from the nature of time and space to the origins of life itself. Researchers in fields such as quantum mechanics, cosmology, and neuroscience are beginning to explore the possibility that consciousness may play a role in the formation of the universe, influencing everything from the behavior of subatomic particles to the large-scale structure of the cosmos. In particular, the idea that consciousness can influence quantum events is gaining traction, as quantum mechanics suggests that the act of observation can influence the state of a particle. If consciousness is indeed involved in the quantum processes that shape the universe, it would mean that the mind is not simply an observer of reality, but an active participant in its creation. This shift in perspective is not just limited to the scientific community. It also has profound implications for our spiritual and philosophical understanding of the universe. If consciousness is universal, then it suggests that we are all connected on a deep, fundamental level. This interconnectedness could provide the basis for a new, more holistic understanding of reality, one that recognizes the unity of all things. Such a perspective challenges the atomistic view of reality, which sees the universe as a collection of isolated parts, and instead promotes a vision of a cohesive, integrated whole, where every part is inextricably linked to every other part. In this view, our individual actions and thoughts are not isolated occurrences, but are connected to the greater flow of universal consciousness, meaning that every thought and action has the potential to affect the larger whole. In practical terms, this interconnectedness may also have ethical implications. If we accept that consciousness is universal, then we must recognize that our individual actions are not isolated, but are part of a larger web of existence. This understanding could encourage a more compassionate and responsible approach to life, as it suggests that harming others or the environment ultimately harms the greater consciousness that connects us all. It invites us to reconsider our relationship to the earth, to other living beings, and to the universe as a whole. The recognition of our interconnectedness could help foster a greater sense of empathy and responsibility, not just for our fellow human beings, but for all living things. Ultimately, the exploration of consciousness as a universal, fundamental force invites us to expand our understanding of reality in ways that challenge the very fabric of our worldview. It suggests that the boundaries between mind and matter, self and other, may be far more fluid than we have been taught. If consciousness is indeed the key to understanding the mysteries of existence, then it opens up infinite possibilities for discovery, exploration, and personal transformation. As we continue to delve into the nature of consciousness, we may find that the answers to some of life's deepest questions lie not in the external world, but within the vast, interconnected field of awareness that exists at the heart of reality itself. Through this journey of exploration, we're not only unlocking the secrets of the universe, but also discovering our true nature as conscious, interconnected beings. As we continue to unravel the mysteries of consciousness, we find ourselves faced with questions that seem to transcend the limits of human understanding. The deeper we probe into the nature of awareness, the more we are confronted with paradoxes that challenge not only our scientific models, but our very perception of reality itself. What if the mind, far from being a passive observer of the world, is actually the active force shaping it? What if consciousness isn't something that merely arises from the brain, but is a fundamental, universal aspect of the cosmos, woven into the very fabric of existence? These are the types of questions that begin to emerge when we look beyond the confines of traditional materialism and venture into the realm of consciousness as an integral and omnipresent force. The journey to understanding the true nature of consciousness is not just about piecing together scientific data or analyzing brain scans. It requires a shift in perspective, an acknowledgement that reality itself may not be as solid, separate, or predictable as we once thought. Instead of viewing the world as a collection of isolated objects interacting in a deterministic fashion, we must begin to consider the possibility that all things, material and immaterial, are part of a larger, interconnected whole, where consciousness is not simply confined to the mind of human or animal, but is a universal force that connects every aspect of existence. This idea invites us to ask, what if consciousness is not merely a byproduct of the brain, but an organizing principle of the entire universe? What if, at the deepest level, the mind is not separate from the body or the world around it, but is a vital force that shapes and influences reality itself?